we may distinguish three stages. 1. The habit of ordinary oral prayer in church and at home. 2. The union of prayerful thoughts and feelings with the mind and heart. 3. Unceasing prayer. The Jesus prayer may go with both of the first two, but its real place is with unceasing prayer. The principal condition for success in prayer is the purification of the heart from passions and from every attachment to things sensual. Without this, prayer will remain all the time in the first or oral degree. The more the heart is purified, the more oral prayer will become prayer of the mind in the heart. And when the heart becomes quite pure, then unceasing prayer will be established. How can this be done? In church, following the service, and retain the thoughts and feelings which you experience there. At home, awaken yourself the thought and feeling of prayer, and maintain them in your soul with the help of the Jesus prayer. Prayer has various degrees. At first is only the prayer of the spoken word, but with this must go prayer of the mind and heart, warming it and maintaining it. Later, mind in heart prayer gains its independence, becoming sometimes active, stimulated by one's own efforts, and sometimes self-moving, bestowed as a gift. Prayer as a gift is the same as inward attraction towards God and develops from it. Later on, when the state of the soul under the influence of this attraction becomes constant, mind and heart prayer will be active unceasingly. All earlier temporary attractions now become transformed into states of contemplation, and it is at this point that contemplative prayer begins. The state of contemplation is a captivity of the mind and of the entire vision by a spiritual object so overpowering that all outward things are forgotten and wholly absent from the consciousness. The mind and consciousness become so completely immersed in the object contemplated that it is as though we no longer possess them. There is prayer which man himself makes, and there is prayer which God himself gives to him who prays. Who is there who does not know the first? And you must also know the second, at least in its inception. Anyone wishing to approach the Lord will first approach him by prayer. He begins to go to church and to pray at home with the help of a prayer book or without, but thoughts keep running away. He cannot manage to control them. All the same, the more he strives to pray, the more thoughts will quieten down, and the purer prayer will become. But the atmosphere of the soul is not purified until a small spiritual flame is kindled in the soul. This flame is the work of the grace of God, not a special grace, but one common to all. This flame appears when a man has attained a certain measure of purity in the general moral order of his life. When this small flame is kindled, or a permanent warmth is formed in the heart, the ferment of thoughts is stilled. The same thing happens in the soul as happened to the woman with an issue of blood. Her blood staunched. In this state, prayer more or less approaches permanency, and for this, the Jesus prayer serves as an intermediary. This is the limit to which prayer performed by man himself can rise. I think that this is very clear to you. Further, on in this state, another kind of prayer may be given, which comes to man instead of being performed by him. The spirit of prayer comes upon man and drives him into the depths of the heart, as if he were taken by the hand and forcibly led from one room to another. The soul is here taken captive by an invading force and is kept willingly within, as long as this overwhelming power of the prayer still holds sway over it. I know 2 degrees of such invasion. In the first, the soul sees everything and is conscious of itself and of its outer surroundings. It can reason and govern itself. It can even destroy this state if it so desires. This too should be clear to you. But the Holy Fathers, and especially St. Isaac the Syrian, mention a second degree of prayer, which is given to or descends upon a man. Isaac considers that this prayer, which he calls ecstasy or ravishment, is higher than what that described above. Here too, the spirit of prayer comes upon a man, but the soul, carried away by it, passes into such a state of contemplation that it forgets its outer surroundings, ceases to reason, and only contemplates, and it has no power to control itself or to break from this state. You remember how the Holy Fathers write of someone who began to pray before his evening meal and came to himself only next morning. This is the prayer of ravishment or contemplation. With some, it has been accompanied by illumination of their faces, by light around them, with others by levitation. St. Paul the Apostle was in the state when he was carried up into paradise, and the holy prophets also were in the same state of ecstasy when the Spirit bore them away. Gaze in wonder at the great mercy of God towards us sinners. A little effort, and how great is the result. Rightly may we say to those who labor, work on, for what you seek is of true value. You have probably heard such words as oral prayer, mental prayer, prayer of the heart. You may also have heard discussions about each of them separately. What is the cause of this division of prayer into parts? Because it happens that sometimes through our negligence the tongue recites the holy words of prayer, but the mind wanders elsewhere, or the mind understands the words of the prayer, but the heart does not respond to them by feeling. In the first case, prayer is only oral, and it is not prayer at all. In the second, mental prayer joins the oral, but this prayer is still imperfect and incomplete. Complete and real prayer comes only when the prayer of the word and thought is joined by prayer of feeling. Spiritual or inner prayer comes when he who prays, after gathering his mind within his heart, from there directs his prayer to God in words no longer oral but silent, glorifying him and giving thanks, confessing his sins with contrition before God, and asking from him the spiritual and physical blessings that he needs. You must pray not only with words, but with the mind, and not only with the mind, but with the heart, so that the mind understands and sees clearly what is said in words, and the heart feels what the mind is thinking. All these combined together constitute real prayer, and if any of them are absent, your prayer is either not perfect or it is not prayer at all. When inner prayer gains power, then it will control oral prayer, gaining dominion over external prayer and even absorbing it. As a result, the zeal of prayer will take fire, because then paradise will be in the soul. If you content yourself with exterior prayer alone, you may cool in the work of prayer, even if you practice it with attention and understanding. The principal thing in prayer is a feeling heart. I have spoken more than once about how this work is to be done. You must not allow your thoughts to wander at random, but as soon as they run away, you must immediately bring them back, reproaching yourself, regretting and deploring the strain of the mind. St. John of the Ladder says of this, you must make a great effort to confine your mind within the words of the prayer.